Thank you to the organizers of Sant Jordi Festival New York 2025 for inviting me, DP Snyder, and Mexican writer Angelina Muñiz-Huberman to participate in your festivities this year. We will read the short story Wanderer from her book Arrhythmias. Arrhythmias was first published in Spanish by Bonilla Artigas Editores in 2016, and my translation of the book was published in English by Literal Publishing and Hablemos Escritoras in 2022. This collection of 32 stories combines poetic portraits of creators and thinkers of the past with tales of the author herself, told from a third-person perspective. Angelina's tone is at once playful and serious, historical and contemporary, narrative, and very poetic. Translating this book has affected me deeply, in part because of the friendship that La Maestra Angelina and I have formed, but also because the time focused on her writing style and ideas has made a huge impression on my own writing, my way of thinking, and my way of seeing the world. Wanderer is about the German Jewish philosopher Walter Benjamin, who, in the company of others, including the philosopher Hannah Arendt, fled Germany to France and ended up in Portbou at the Spanish border. Arendt made it through the border and to New York City. Walter did not. I will first read my translation, then Angelina will read her original in Spanish, and then we will have a brief chat. Thank you for listening. Wanderer. Walter B. had been an esperando, waiting and hoping all his life, his whole entire life. Maybe he was the greatest one of all, a real dreamer, until he got to Portbou, where he lost his hope in order to give in to the final and conclusive one, from which you don't return. All his life, he had walked through the streets, plazas, parks, mountains, shortcuts, pathways, byways. Above all, he was a terrific walker, a wanderer, an absent-minded thinker, one who kept his eyes on the ground and rarely glanced up at the sky. He never tripped, and he would find tiny discarded objects. He collected leftover stuff, a dry leaf from a tree, a pencil with a broken tip and the eraser worn down, a small lead soldier missing a leg, a music box with no string, a wristwatch with a cracked crystal, a child's shoe without laces, a hand mirror with no handle, a book missing pages, a dried-up pen, an empty perfume bottle, a discarded briefcase, a stone loosened from the pavement, but also a bird fallen from its nest or a dog with no master or a stray cat. And above all, books, odd books, old, missing pages, books about mental illnesses and fairy tales, because he favored children over men as a source of new ideas, as an abridged form of wisdom. He picked up everything and wrapped it up carefully, or if it was alive and needed help, he gave it food and drink. In that way, he helped to tidy up the city to some degree and put his melancholy to work as a gesture of love toward the human and divine creation. Nothing seemed disposable to him, and he petted his objects as he did his dogs and cats. Every day he inspected them, and he took great care of them. The objects and beings collected in this fashion were useful to him as a point of departure for his philosophic and somewhat poetic meditations. He saw himself as the nexus between the most low and the most high. Above all, he was attracted to the small, the cheaply made, the humble, the miniature. In short, he discovered the unseen messages of all things. Once, in the Cluny Museum, he came upon the prayer Shema Israel, written on 2 grains of wheat, and it was one of the great thrills of his life. He wondered how the person who made it came up with the idea, the secret meaning of it. Why choose 2 grains of wheat? What sort of ink would be permanent for centuries and centuries? What a steady hand! What an extraordinary display of mysticism! The smallest and the largest on 2 grains of wheat. Perhaps he thought about the goodness of wheat and how it is made into bread, the most noble of all foods. Once, he carefully tucked away his manuscripts in a suitcase just in case he was persecuted one day and had to make a quick escape. His work became a piece of luggage. His suitcase became a traveler, sometimes lost, sometimes found, outdoors or down in basements. And as if in some kind of apocryphal tale, it finally turned up again after the unification of East and West Germany. His secrets had to be revealed someday. Pages waiting to be published, like those of writers who were ahead of their time, or were feared, or censored. The enlightened. His hopes, scattered in the streets and washed by the rain, one day were crushed against a Spanish border fence. "You cannot pass," said the Phalanges guards as the Nazis were closing in. He returned to the hotel, said goodbye to his traveling companions, and lay down, hastening along his final sleep with a dose of morphine. He took a long time to die, and they found him still alive the next day, foaming at the mouth. The doctor didn't even dare to send him to the hospital. That very morning, the border opened up, permitting his companions to pass, while his corpse and his suitcase remained behind, waiting. Now I'd like to invite my friend, the extraordinary writer, Angelina Muñiz-Huberman, to read her original Spanish version from this book, Arrhythmias. Angelina?
Thank you very much. Vagabundo. Walter B. toda su vida había sido un esperando. Toda su vida. Tal vez el más grande, un iluso. Hasta que llegó a Portbou, donde perdió la esperanza para entregarse a la última y definitiva, de la que no se regresa. Toda su vida había caminado por calles, plazas, parques, montañas, atajos, senderos, vericuetos. Era, ante todo, un gran caminante, un deambulador, un distraído pensador, que miraba al suelo y pocas veces al cielo. No se tropezaba y descubría mínimos objetos abandonados. Coleccionaba restos de cosas, la hoja seca de un árbol, un lápiz con la punta rota y la goma desgastada, un pequeño soldado de plomo al que le faltaba una pierna, una caja de música sin la cuerda, un reloj con la carátula estrellada, un zapato de niño sin agujetas, un espejo sin mango, un libro deshojado, una pluma sin tinta, un perfumero vacío, un maletín abandonado, la piedra escapada del pavimento, pero también un pájaro caído del nido, o un perro sin dueño, o un gato extraviado. Y sobre todo, libros. Libros raros, antiguos, deshojados. Libros sobre enfermedades mentales y de cuentos de hadas. Cuentos de hadas, porque antes que a los hombres, prefería a los niños como fuente original del pensamiento, como forma abreviada de la sabiduría. Todo lo recogía y lo envolvía cuidadosamente, o si era vivo y necesario, le daba de comer y de beber. Así contribuía a limpiar un poco la ciudad y a emplear la melancolía como signo de amor por la creación humana y divina. Nada le parecía desechable y acariciaba sus objetos como a los perros y a los gatos. Cada día los revisaba y los cuidaba con esmero. Los objetos y seres así recogidos le servían de punto de partida para sus reflexiones filosóficas y un tanto poéticas. Se consideraba el punto de unión entre lo más bajo y lo más alto. Sobre todo le atraía lo pequeño, lo deleznable, lo humilde, lo miniaturesco. En lo breve, hallaba el mensaje invisible de todas las cosas. Una vez, en el Museo de Cluny, descubrió escrito en 2 granos de trigo el rezo de Shema Israel, y fue una de sus más grandes emociones. Imaginó cómo se le ocurrió el que lo hizo, cuál era su sentido oculto. ¿Por qué escoger 2 granos de trigo? ¿Qué tipo de tinta que fuera indeleble por los siglos de los siglos? ¿Qué pulso tan delicado? ¡Qué extraordinaria muestra de misticismo! Lo más pequeño y lo más grande, en 2 granos de trigo. Quizá pensó en la bondad del trigo y en su conversión en pan, el más noble de los alimentos. Otra vez, guardó sus manuscritos con mucho cuidado en una maleta, por si algún día era perseguido y tenía que huir de inmediato. La suya se convirtió en una maleta viajera, a veces perdida, a veces encontrada, al aire libre o en sótanos. Como historia apócrifa, al fin apareció cuando las dos Alemanias oriental y occidental se unificaron. Sus secretos habrán de ser revelados algún día. Páginas en espera de ser publicadas, como las de los escritores que se adelantaron a su tiempo o que fueron temidos y censurados, iluminados. Sus esperanzas dispersas por las calles, lavadas por la lluvia. Un día se estrellaron contra la barrera de una frontera española. No hay paso, le dijeron los guardias falangistas, mientras los nazis ya se acercaban. Regresó al hotel, se despidió de sus compañeros de viaje y se acostó, precipitando su último sueño con una dosis de morfina. Su agonía fue larga y aún lo encontraron con vida al día siguiente, arrojando espuma por la boca. El médico ni siquiera se atrevió a enviarlo al hospital. Esa misma mañana, la frontera se abrió, dejando pasar a sus compañeros, mientras su cadáver y su maleta permanecían en abandono, esperando.
Angelina, when you read that story, I'm impressed again how great you are as a narrator, a storyteller, and how well you read your own work. As you were reading, I was smiling and also felt like crying. We don't have a lot of time for questions, but let me ask you, why did you decide to call him Walter B, using an initial instead of his last name?
Because Walter B is more mysterious, helps you to ask why, as you did, and ask why in all your life about things, because that's the way he loved the children. He had a radio program for children especially, because he found that the children had the truth in their mouths. So I decided to leave it like that because, well, what I have just said, it opens many doors. Sometimes the closed open many doors, as it happened to Kafka. And the person that was waiting, that someone opened him the door, but it was he that should open the door. So I think it's very, very important not to write the whole things and leave your imagination free.
Well, it's one of the challenges of translating you is to respect your eloquent silences, not to mention the staccato form that you often write in, punctuated by long lists, like the lists, like Whitman wrote lists, long lists of things that describe a time and a place and a personality. One of the things I love about this story is how you include the story of the 2 grains of wheat. You could have chosen many stories relating to Walter Benjamin, but you chose that story. I find it interesting in part because this very, very short story is like a grain of wheat in that you manage to convey the essence of Walter Benjamin in such a short text. Were you thinking about that as you wrote this, or is brevity so much a part of you at this point that you were not conscious of that parallel?
Well, I don't know. The moment you start writing, you leave consciousness and everything aside and just let the words come out as they like. Then you can look over and see what is wrong and what is right. But the first impulse is to leave it like it appeared. And yes, I like very Walter Benjamin, like small things, because small things, in the small you can find the big things. And on the contrary, is that they show you a big thing, you can know for where you are starting. So it's a point of a start, a point of view, the small phrase, the small words.
Well, thank you very much, Angelina, for reading with me today. And who knows, if Walter Benjamin had gotten through that checkpoint and made it to New York City, the world might be a different place today. Or maybe not.
Thank you.
That, yes, that is a life not knowing the end.
Thank you again. And thanks to St. Jordi Festival New York for inviting us. Bye-bye.
A big hug to all of us, all of you.